Roblox broke concurrent player records, boasting an incredible 47.3 million active players in August of 2025. Couple that with a platform that's so simple a child can develop for it, what's not to love? The Roblox monetization scheme. Roblox has dumped a lot of money into its platform for its developers. It is undeniably a fantastic beginner-friendly engine to learn game development. You get exposed to very advanced networking concepts pretty quickly, and it's a night and day developing experience from something like Unity netcode, peer-to-peer, wishlist web wars on Steam. They're a free-to-play, free-to-develop platform though, so where's the scheme? Roblox starts by taking a 30% cut of user-generated content, an industry-standard 70% split with creator. The same as Steam and Epic Games. Only indie platforms like itch that let you set your split as high as 100% can compete with something like that. Roblox Premium members also pay out an added bonus for playtime spent on your game. This means you get paid just for having a popular game on the platform. It's not game-changing, but it's a nice move overall. In theory, this would mean that we're earning Roblox $10 nets our developer $7. Bearing in mind they're a private contractor, so they should set aside 20 to 30% for taxes. This is a reasonable cut, but Roblox doesn't pay you in dollars. They pay you in their own monopoly money that they've egregiously inflated at the point of exchange. Something small I could understand, but to even exchange it all requires a staggering amount of 30,000 Robux for 115 USD. They recently upped it from 105. More on that later, but to put this into perspective, a moderate livable income of $2,000 to $3,000 USD would require 600,000 to 900,000 Robux. This income isn't just unrealistic, it's an outright scam. The math is almost meant to confuse you, so let me try to break it down. I, as the user, pay Roblox $420 for, let's say, 42,458 Robux. These numbers will make sense later. There are typically small Robux bonuses, but generally $1 equates to 100 Robux. So I have 42,458 Robux, and Roblox has $420 generated by one of its developers. It just doesn't know which yet. I'm a whale though, and I want to make it rain on your game. 42,458 after accounting for the 30% that Roblox takes off the top is conveniently 30,000, or the minimum amount you would need to exchange from the developer exchange. $420 generated by a developer equals $105 for a developer on Roblox, or I guess now 115. Essentially a 25% cut. This isn't industry standard, it's highway robbery. There is something to be said about the exposure provided by such a massive platform. The active player counts they reach are nothing to ignore, but with such a marginal split, you truly are left out to dry. Gacha mechanics and gambling litter the front page, leading developers to speculate that profitability is a large factor, if not the largest factor, in the success of their game. A category I think I and many other devs fall into is this notion of making Roblox a better place, to return it to a golden age of fun rather than fun enough until the paywall hit. The problem is Roblox doesn't care about fun, at least not more than they care about profitability. Groundbreaking shit, I know. I think what sets Roblox apart though is the ways they play with your emotions. Especially when your primary age group is children, they do well to market the youngest, most successful developers, almost as if to say if they can do it, you can too. Plus with such a garbage exchange rate, you might as well put that money towards advertising on the site. You probably won't see a return on that investment, but at least it'll feel like they paid you for something. I was browsing on TikTok one day a few months into my dev experience. A live stream caught my eye. It was a Roblox game in early development, something by the name of Bike Battles. As the name would suggest, it was a 3D Tron clone. You spawn in with a bike, and then you navigate the map trying to avoid enemy trails while trapping your foe. A timeless concept, just one that was more challenging than I thought to execute in 3D. Okay. Yeah. Things are fucked. Ghosting, or more specifically, desynchronized activity between the player's client and the server, was very apparent. Fixing this, though, would be a Herculean task I wasn't up to completing. The entire thing was written with NIT, a development framework that uses its own library of classes and functions to aid a network. It gets a bit messy, there are tutorials that will go into it more, but I fucking hate NIT. Error codes become obfuscated behind layers of NIT garbage. The entire scripting experience feels needlessly complex for the sake of a few quality of life features that are instantly nullified by the lack of proper error codes when things go wrong. Could have just been using it wrong. When I clicked on the error, it didn't bring me to the line. I spent weeks trying to correct the desync issues. The most glaring issues left over by the previous coder were an array of client-sided scripts that should have never been running on a player's machine. Exploiters can hijack these local scripts. As a result, damage calculations, movement, win conditions, etc. should all be handled by the server, while the client handles inputs, animations, non-game critical math. I literally had players game ending themselves on the client. Of course the client and the server are going to be out of sync. The server is waiting on the client to say it's lost the game. What's more, everything from trails to moving the bike itself was client-sided on the basis of lag. Something I did run into when making everything server-sided, but was ultimately not what killed the project. Now, I wasn't helping on some basis I'd be paid, but it got to a point where the work ahead of me demanded compensation. At this point, I'd spent hours tuning the bike, only to find something just barely out of sync. I came up with several different trail solutions, from like removing temporary trails after you would make a turn, but then when you'd make a turn, it would still use a bad position, and so then your line would still be all whack, to elongating a single block, but that still ended up just leaving random positions everywhere. The original way trails were done in this were by placing segments as the bike went along. So if it went like 1 unit, it would drop 1 unit of trail. Ultimately, the original placing of like these segments was cleanest, but it still wasn't perfect. You would have these like random triangles at turns, and so it just wasn't the Tron feeling that you'd want. Mix and knit and all the other bugs that I was running into, it was ballooning into quite the task. LT Crazy, the owner of the game, didn't have the funds to pay me. I was easily looking at another few weeks to totally rewrite broken systems, and it just wasn't something I wanted to do without being compensated. The game was generating money, but with these exchange rates, it was barely covering a phone bill, let alone sustaining paid development of a game. This massive 80,000 Robux donation that would cost $800 pays our developer 56,000 Robux. To give you real-world numbers, you receive 35/10 of a cent per Robux, equating to $196 before accounting for taxes. There isn't one thing that killed Bike Battle's development, but the perfect storm emerged that no community support could overcome. You'd be better off having people sub to your Patreon than you would making the next big thing on Roblox. I was let go from my sales job about a year ago for not meeting quota. It was and still is terrifying. The uncertainty of where my next source of income will come from fuels a familiar anxiety that anyone unfortunate enough to be in a similar situation knows well. I wasn't editing videos for this channel, I was developing. Thought at the time was to create a tycoon. I could make videos featuring the cool things I'd add and try to form a community around this benevolent goal of making Roblox a better place. At the time, I didn't think of myself as a game developer. That would be overzealous. Instead, I was simply making a game. Totally different thing. Followed countless tutorials, enjoying the challenge that came with integrating more complex system. The race to the top that's happened within the Roblox YouTube space made learning even advanced topics easier than ever. A stark contrast to when I first opened Roblox in the 7th grade. The first advanced feature I added was a lock-on system, except the tutorial I was following wasn't great, or at least it just didn't meet my expectations for what the lock-on should be. If the cursor wasn't directly over the target, you wouldn't lock on. What's worse is it created some pretty messy camera clipping through walls. It took a lot of tweaking, research into Dark Souls mechanics, but I eventually created a focus field that, when a player or entity would enter, added them to a dictionary. This dictionary could then be cycled through, highlighting the corresponding root part in the dictionary. I also did some raycasting fuckery to get the camera out the wall, but that felt less impressive than the focus field dictionary thing. Next came combat, the bread and butter of the game. Each attack utilized an element: dark, light, life, and death. Light was weak to life, but strong to dark. Dark was weak to life, but strong to death. Here's a chart.
This is gonna go crazy when you want to add a new element.
What do you mean when I want to add a new element? You think I'm where with what D-pad? Everything else was a neutral outcome. This allowed for what I felt was a very unique fighting experience. It didn't completely eliminate spamming the attack button, but it at least made you think about where you held the D-pad. Additionally, knockback and stun effects allowed for super effective moves you don't tend to see in other fighting games. Offense becomes defense. Defense becomes more than just air flipping away. Next was a functional telltale dialogue system. Data stores have some weird limitations with send and receive rates, especially with large amounts of data, so to overcome this I had to get a bit creative. It started out as just wanting players to have choice in the dialogue. I tweaked a free dialogue asset where I could register a scene ID, add a number, parse that number, so that we could see what decisions have you made. So registering a scene ID would trigger different dialogue paths, and then a data store would tally up what scene ID that player had selected. This tally count would then be used to compare against other player choices, and based on their choice IDs and server tallies, you can see what decisions they've made relative to everyone else. The server data store is then just acting as a leaderboard, counting by 1 anytime a particular choice is selected. I also accounted for multiple types of choice. You can have an A or B choice, or an A, B, or C choice, which is the same as A, B, just 3 options. Or this one's a bit weirder. An A, B, and C choice. Let's say you have an old retired war veteran with a secret notebook. You might have dialogue that prompts you to respect the Elder Goblin Rabbit thing, but you might also have dialogue that pushes those boundaries and locks certain paths with other characters, all of which would be tracked differently depending on the quantity of choices and the types of decisions the player is making. The scene ID would then reset anytime a tycoon rebirths, allowing the player to try new paths within the story and experience new things. One idea I had for this was changing the fish spawn rate depending on if the player had donated to the fisherman's conservation effort. If you donated nothing and completed the story, the thought was you'd get different reactions from both the NPCs and the environment. This would have been implemented, however I ended up abandoning the project before officially changing anything. There was a completely unique fishing mechanic that I hadn't seen before in another game, so I have to keep that close to my chest for now or the haters will sabotage me. Found out about A-Chassis, which is a really solid car framework you'll recognize from a lot of your favorite games. As I drifted my A86 with the badges removed, I dreamed of something more though. I had mastered the land and sea, but could I rule the sky? I followed a solid plane tutorial that utilized the new aerodynamics update, which simulates wind and physics.
I'm basically Aladdin. Whole new world in this bitch.
Oh, dude, you got complex flying features, and you got the fucking roll model? That's hard. That's actually so hard.
Is this the fucking plane?
He's kicking his little footsies.
You got center of mass modeled?
No, I have a rough idea in my head.
There are definitely some quirks, but overall it's really fun. Now when you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to ask for some milk, naturally. Well, when you give a player a plane, they're gonna ask for a volcano. I don't make the rules. Then I gave both the planes and cars hitboxes, and I gave the planes missiles, guns, and bombs, so they could dogfight. It was buggy and glorious. The thought was different vendors would offer different classification and quality of aircraft. Things like stunt planes, bombers, and fighters alongside various speeds, flight ceilings, and durability. Speaking of flight ceilings, this was going to be a way of naturally cutting people off from progression. The game I remember fondly was this old Star Wars game. It basically doesn't run anymore, with most of the gear and scripts that once powered it being too obfuscated and dated for its functions to work as intended. There were a few things, though, I managed to salvage from it. The Force was a big one. This was a very fun part of the original game, and I could now take off all the guardrails. Anchored blocks, unanchor them. While the Force was fun, there was a particular model that really stood out, one that many would overlook: the planets. You see, it blew my mind as a kid to be able to navigate this entire solar system in a ship. Add in these aerodynamic planes, we could create an entire solar system. Levels locked by the natural progression required to get on a plane that can get you to this new world. This inward-facing sphere model was one of the coolest additions to the game. I added a day and night cycle by changing its color, and it does a pretty convincing job of pretending to be a skybox. Petition to call it a Truman box whenever the player has like a pseudo skybox like this. Last thing I'll share was this particle accelerator I made.
Do your thing. Think machine. Potassium, let's go.
We fuck with potassium.
It's realistically just a periodic table, but it features the most naturally occurring isotope of that element visually, which is the same info we see on a periodic table.
Hafnium. Looks pretty full to me. Sorry.
It creates red dots for protons and white dots for neutrons, and includes whether it's diatomic by creating 2 atoms with the corresponding number of covalent bonds between them using these blue beams. It also lists a bunch of nonsense like whether it's radioactive, what family it's in, and all that jazz.
Bismuth! Let's go! I fucking love bismuth, dude. I have some bismuth on my desk. Wait, bismuth is radioactive? I got some of that shit on my desk. Wait a minute.
You've been sitting next to a radioactive rock?
Well, previously thought to be stable. Hold on.
At some point I began considering myself a developer. I hated coding in high school, it felt stuffy and pointless. Video games gave coding a sense of purpose beyond some simulated corporate setting. Following tutorials didn't really feel like developing either. It wasn't until I actually grasped these coding concepts that things began to click. Prior to this mentality shift, I was okay accepting meager pay for making anything at all. Now I see these exchange rates for what they are though. Roblox seemingly hides behind this 70% split while stealing from developers of all sizes. From small-time indie devs with big ideas to established creators generating Roblox money. you are getting scammed. Roblox has created a really solid engine for developing client-server relationships in a straightforward way. They provide a large platform to publish your ideas to, allowing for a wide net to be cast when you're searching for an audience. Its monetization scheme, however, leads it to being anti-developer. Have anything to add or disagree with? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you want to see more game dev adjacent stuff. Wishlist Web Wars on Steam, the multiplayer RTS game inspired by Wargame. Demo coming soon or already out, who knows. Wishlisting really helps boost the Steam algorithm, so anything helps if you want to check it out. Thank you so much for watching.
Oh, slightly radioactive.
I don't know. I don't think I would trust anything that says true to radioactive. You might want to put that thing in a plastic bag or something.
I don't think the plastic bag is stopping harmful ionizing radiation.
It's only slightly. A hefty bag could definitely stop that.
It can definitely poison you. You don't want to eat it. You don't want to put it in your mouth. Extremely weakly radioactive. If 1 kilogram of bismuth was made on the first day of the universe, 450 nanograms would have decayed by today. You get more radiation from eating a banana or cosmic rays from the sky.